The woman is smiling. She sets the glass of wine down in front of Virginia and pulls her chair a little closer and says, "Don't worry, the impresario in Florence is expecting you. The job is yours. Everything is arranged." Virginia wraps both hands around the glass. She is excited. She has been waiting for something like this for years. She trusts this woman completely. She lifts the glass and drinks. Within minutes, Virginia's vision starts to blur. Her hands feel heavy. She tries to say something and the words don't come out right. She looks across the table and the woman sitting opposite her has not moved. She is still smiling. She is watching Virginia the way someone watches a clock, just waiting for the hands to reach the right position. Virginia tries to stand up. She cannot. And then the sound, short and sharp, the kind of sound that if Virginia's mind were still working, she would recognize immediately. She has heard that sound before, in a kitchen, on a farm, when something is about to be cut. To understand how the story arrived at that moment, you have to go back almost 50 years, back to the beginning of Leonarda Cianciulli's life, which from its very first days seemed marked by catastrophe. Leonarda was born on April 14, 1894 in Montella, a small village in the Campania region of southern Italy. Her birth was not a celebrated event. Her mother, Emilia, had not wanted the pregnancy. By some accounts, the child was the product of an affair, and Emilia never fully forgave her daughter for existing. Leonarda grew up in a house where she was made to feel like a mistake. She attempted suicide twice before she was a teenager. The first time she survived by chance. The second time, a neighbor found her in time. She grew into a young woman who was desperate for stability, for love, for some arrangement of the world that made her feel safe. She believed strongly in the supernatural. She visited fortune tellers. She had her palm read multiple times, and the readings she received stayed with her for the rest of her life. One reader told her she would marry and have children. Another told her the children would die. A third, according to Leonarda's own later account, told her that all her children were doomed. In 1914, she married a man named Raffaele Pansardi against her family's wishes. Her family had wanted her to marry someone else, and when she defied them, her mother reportedly cursed her. Leonarda believed in that curse completely. She carried it with her like a stone in her chest. The early years of the marriage were not easy. Leonarda and Raffaele moved around, struggling financially. Raffaele worked as a registry office clerk. They had very little, and then the children began to come, and the deaths began too. Leonarda became pregnant 17 times. 3 of those pregnancies ended in miscarriage. 10 of her children died in infancy or early childhood. She watched child after child become sick and die, and with each death the conviction grew inside her that the curse was real, that something was working against her family, that she was being punished. By the time the surviving children were old enough to go to school, Leonarda had developed an obsessive need to protect them. She had 4 children who survived, 2 sons named Giuseppe and Benito, and 2 others. She watched over them with an intensity that people in her neighborhood noticed. She refused to let them out of her sight for long. She prayed constantly and visited priests and fortune tellers with equal frequency. In 1930, the family was living in Loria when Leonarda was charged with fraud. The details of exactly what she had done were never fully established in the public record, but she was convicted and served time. It was a humiliation that added to her sense that the world was hostile, that she had enemies, that forces outside her control were trying to destroy what little she had. After her release, the family relocated. By the late 1930s, Leonarda and Raffaele had settled in Correggio, a small, orderly town in the Emilia-Romagna region. Leonarda set up a small shop. She sold goods from her home. She was known in the neighborhood as a woman who told fortunes on the side, who had a gift for reading cards and palms. Women came to her. She listened to their problems. She gave advice. She became, in a quiet way, a figure of some importance on her street. People trusted her. Her son Giuseppe was growing up during these years, and in 1939, Italy entered the Second World War. Giuseppe was called up for military service. This was the moment that appears to have shifted something inside Leonarda permanently. She was terrified he would die, not the ordinary terror of a mother sending a son to war. This was something deeper and more specific. She had already lost 10 children. She had already watched too many small coffins. She was not going to lose Giuseppe. She began to think, based on her beliefs in the occult and on things she had read and heard, that there might be a way to protect him, that a sacrifice could be made, that the right offering could keep him safe. She began to look at the women who visited her for fortune readings in a different way. The first woman she chose was Faustina Seti. Faustina was an unmarried woman who had come to Leonarda hopping for help finding a husband. Leonarda told her she had found the perfect match in a town not far away. She told Faustina the man was respectable, that the match was a good one, but that Faustina should keep it quiet. She should not tell her family or friends where she was going until the arrangement was complete. Leonarda helped her draft letters that would be sent to her relatives after she left, so that no one would worry. Faustina trusted her. In December 1939, Faustina came to Leonarda's home. She was given a glass of wine. Leonarda later said she had drugged the wine. When Faustina was incapacitated, Leonarda killed her with an axe. What happened next is where the case becomes something that investigators and criminologists would study for decades afterward. Leonarda did not attempt to bury the body or dispose of it quickly. She had a plan, a practical, methodical plan that she had thought through carefully. She dismembered the body. She collected the blood in a basin. She then rendered the body down. The flesh and fat were put into a large pot and cooked over heat. She used caustic soda to assist in the process of breaking down the organic material. The rendered fat was combined with other materials and pressed into bars of soap. The blood she collected was mixed with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs and baked into a batch of tea cakes. She gave the soap to neighbors as gifts. She served the tea cakes to visitors who came to her home. Leonarda later described this process in her own words during her confession. And the detail she provided was specific and clinical. She did not describe it with obvious distress. She described it the way someone might describe a recipe they had perfected. Faustina Seti was reported missing by her family after some time passed, and the letters she had written, the ones Leonarda had helped compose, failed to reassure them. But there was no evidence, no body. Leonarda had been seen with Faustina, but so had many others in the town. The missing persons report was filed. Nothing came of it immediately. Several months passed. The investigation into Faustina's disappearance had not progressed. Leonarda turned her attention to a second woman. Her name was Francesca Sovi. Francesca was also a woman without close ties, a woman who was looking for something better than what she had. Leonarda told her she had found her a job, a good position at a girls' school in a town called Piacenza. Leonarda advised her to keep it quiet until she had arrived and settled in. She helped her write letters to be sent later. Again, she told her to come to the house. In September 1940, Francesca came. She was given wine. She was drugged, and then she was killed with the axe. The same process followed: the rendering, the soap, the blood turned into tea cakes. Leonarda later said that after each killing she felt that she had done what was necessary, that her son was protected, that the sacrifice had value. Giuseppe remained alive. As far as Leonarda was concerned, this was confirmation. But Giuseppe was still at war. He was still in danger. And Leonarda's logic, the internal arithmetic of sacrifice and protection, told her that she needed to do it again. The third victim was a woman named Virginia Cacioppo. Virginia was different from the first two. She was not an isolated or overlooked figure. She was a former soprano, a woman who had performed on stage, who had a wider social circle, who was known to more people. Choosing Virginia was a significant escalation of risk, whether Leonarda recognized that or not. Leonarda told Virginia she had been recommended for a position as secretary to a mysterious impresario in Florence. Virginia was interested. She too was told to keep it quiet. She too came to the house. She too was given wine. In September 1940, Virginia Cacioppo was killed. But this time, something was different. Virginia had a sister-in-law, a woman who paid close attention to Virginia's movements and who noticed almost immediately that something was wrong. Virginia had told the sister-in-law she was going somewhere. The sister-in-law knew roughly when she had left. She knew she had last been seen in the area around Leonarda Cianciulli's house. The sister-in-law went to the police. This was the thread that investigators needed. They began asking questions in the neighborhood. They learned that Virginia had been seen entering Leonarda's home. They noted that Faustina Setti had also been seen there before her disappearance. The pattern was starting to become visible. Police approached Leonarda. They questioned her at her home. She was calm. She said she knew Virginia, that Virginia had come to visit, that they had talked, and that Virginia had left. She said she did not know where Virginia had gone. The officers were not satisfied. They returned. They searched the premises more carefully. It was during one of these searches that they found the materials in the back room. First the soap, then beside it the pot, and in the pot the residue. Forensic examination of the materials in Leonarda's home confirmed the presence of human remains. The fat content, the bone fragments, the biological material in the pot were consistent with a rendered human body. When confronted with this evidence, Leonarda did not deny it. She confessed, and her confession was not a brief admission of guilt. It was a detailed, organized account of what she had done, how she had done it, and why. She explained the logic of the sacrifices. She explained the soap-making process. She explained the tea cakes. She described everything in a tone that investigators described as matter-of-fact. She was arrested. She was charged with 3 counts of murder. Her son Giuseppe was not charged. There was no evidence he had known anything about what his mother had done. He had been at the front when the killings occurred. When he learned what had happened, the record does not tell us much about his reaction, only that he cooperated with investigators and was not implicated. The trial of Leonarda Cianciulli began in 1946. She was not judged to be insane in the legal sense, though the court heard extensive argument about her psychological state. She had a documented history of psychiatric issues. She had attempted suicide. She had suffered enormous loss. Psychiatrists testified about the obsessional quality of her beliefs, her fear for her son, the way her logic around sacrifice and protection had organized itself into something that felt, to her, completely rational. The court found her guilty of all 3 murders. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. She served her time in the asylum portion of her sentence at Pozzuoli. By the accounts of those who dealt with her there, she was quiet and cooperative. She spent time writing. She produced a memoir of sorts, which she titled Confessions of an Embittered Soul. In it she described her life, her losses, her fears for Giuseppe, and the logic that had led her to what she did. She did not express regret in the way that courts and observers expected. She expressed a kind of settled certainty that she had acted according to a system of belief that made complete sense to her. She died in the asylum on October 15, 1970. She was 76 years old. After her death, the physical items connected to the case became objects of morbid fascination. The large ceramic pot she had used is housed at the Criminological Museum in Rome. It sits behind glass. Visitors stand and look at it and try to understand how an ordinary kitchen object became the instrument of what it became. The soap she made was given to neighbors. Some of those neighbors are believed to have died before understanding what they had been given. Others learned the truth during the investigation and the trial and had to live with that knowledge for the rest of their lives. The tea cakes were consumed at gatherings in her home, by women who came to have their fortunes told, by people who trusted her. Correggio is a small town. It still exists. People still live on the streets where these events took place. The house is gone, but the street is not. Residents who grew up there in the post-war years remember their parents and grandparents talking about it in low voices. A woman they had known, a woman they had liked, a woman who had offered them soap and tea cakes. What the case leaves behind is not just the horror of what was done, but the question of what went unseen. 3 women visited Leonarda's home and did not come out. And the people who loved them, who should have asked, who should have gone looking, were already holding the answer in their hands. They simply did not know what they were holding. They washed their hands with her. They fed her to their children at the table.